Okay, guys, welcome to Redhead Rewatch. We are starting with One Tree Hill. I have Alexandra Bunn and my sister Jillian Badgley with me here. They're going to be popping in and out throughout the whole thing. We'll have different guests, maybe a couple other surprise guests. But we're going to start with the pilot. We're going to go through a lot of different shows on this podcast, but One Tree Hill is going to be the first one. So without further ado, let's talk about One Tree Hill, ladies.
Woo.
I have rewatched the show many a time. I know you have rewatched the show many times. We've rewatched it together. We've finished it together, and so I wouldn't want to be doing this podcast with anybody else.
Period.
Okay, so let's just start off by kind of talking about just like briefly One Tree Hill, why we like it, why we watch it, or how we started watching it. Jillian, do you want to start?
Well, I was going to say, since you're the redhead, you should start, but I guess I can start.
Go last. We'll save the best for last.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I started watching One Tree Hill through you. When we would have all the seasons on DVD before streaming was a thing. We had all the seasons. Yeah, I just feel like for being like a Gen Zer weird with like being a little younger than a millennial, but a Gen Z, but I feel like I can go with like in between. I feel like for me, that was one of the first shows, like teen drama shows from the early 2000s that I watched and I really, really liked. Like, I think One Tree Hill was the first like early 2000s teen drama show that I like really got into. And yeah, I just love the characters. Loved Nellie. My favorite character is Brooke Davis. She is the most dynamic character throughout the whole series. She end of season 9 till the start of season 1, like she had the most incredible character development. I am mind blown. And yeah, just loved it. Love the cast. Yeah, it just every time I rewatch it, it just makes me feel happy. It brings me back to like good times, like, but yeah, just love the cast. 10 out of 10. Close over breath.
Fun.
My experience is similar. I think I knew that Jackie was obsessed with the show, but it was like Tumblr times where I kept seeing all these One Tree Hill edits on Tumblr, and I was like, all right, it's time for me to watch this show. So I sought out Jackie and I was like, please give me your DVDs. And I think, thinking back, I think it's the first show that I ever like binged, because that wasn't really a thing back then because there was no streaming. So it was really just like Jackie and her DVD sets, and she was the only one binging. But I remember there would be nights where I was so obsessed with the show where I would like calculate how many episodes I could watch in one night, like, and still go to bed at a reasonable time, or like based on my dance schedule that night. So I love the show. Also, love Brooke Davis. Also, you'll learn that from the first time I watched it to like the 30th time I watch it, my opinions have really changed. I started out as a big Peyton girly, and now I hate her.
But we're and so obviously she changed her mind.
Jackie will never let me forget it, but I was a Peyton girly, and I was never like, I would never fight for her when she didn't deserve to be fought for, but I just, in my initial reaction was that I liked her, and now I don't at all. But yeah, love the show, specifically seasons like 1 through 4.
Yeah,
high school is tough for me, but I do, there are some good moments.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like too, just like you said, I mean, binging is such a thing now, but like back then it wasn't. And it was like you would have to sit there and take the DVD out, put the new DVD in. Although I will say one thing that I do miss about the DVDs is the deleted scenes, like all of the extras that were like at the end of the disc, at the season, all that stuff.
And like the pamphlets, there's like a pamphlet and it gave you a summary of
Description.
each episode
Yeah.
on each disc. And you love that because you're like, all right, what was this episode where this happened? What disc is this on? And literally open the manual in the TV packets and it would tell you. So yeah.
And like going back and rewatching it, I remember specifically with season 8, which is one of my favorites. I remember there would be like clumps like per disc of episodes that I loved, and I'd be like, "Oh, I love disc 3." Like that's my favorite part of the season.
Mm-hmm. Or I remember like me and Cece babysat together for her cousin or whatever. So I would literally take like all my favorite discs from like all my favorite shows and just put it in like one little DVD booklet and like bring it for that night or whatever. But yeah, I mean, One Tree Hill for me is like kind of everything. I feel like out of all of my friends, I mean, I had Jillian watch it, I had you watch it, I had Jess watch it, I had everybody watching it, even my family, like my mom, Uncle Brad, like our parents, like I would have it on all the time. So they would also like they know what goes on in the story. So I think for me, One Tree Hill, I started watching in like 8th grade. By our senior year was the last season 9.
I remember that.
And I don't know. I think it was just the music, the sports of it all, the small town, like just kind of all of it. And it definitely like helped me get through, especially like middle school, and high school. But like, I think really middle school was like when you're just like emo and you just sit in your room and watch, you know, teen dramas. Like that's what you do to feel like related and like other people are going through what you're going through. And I actually watched One Tree Hill on YouTube until I got the DVD sets, like for Christmas or whatever it was. So I think it's interesting too that like, I mean, obviously all of us were kind of on the younger side of things, especially when it first started, like in 2003. So we didn't watch like every single week, every single episode. Like we kind of jumped in, I would say like midway through the show, watching it live week to week after, you know, watching the DVDs and whatnot. But I love that we have Alex Bunn on this, and she's going to pop in and out because me and Bunn have opposite opinions on pretty much everything and every show.
Not so much anymore. We did at one point.
Originally we did. And I will say too, to your point of that, like I used to have no room and no excuse and no love at all for Peyton. And over time, and I think listening, I know you guys don't listen to Drama Queens, but listening to, and like even Hillary Burton talking about constantly like Peyton's the worst. And knowing the backstory of Mark and all of that stuff, which like we'll get into that when we talk about episodes and stuff. I even like found newfound love for Peyton. I think too, when you go back and rewatch things as you get older, things look different. Like Keith, hot, love Keith. Keith is my favorite. Like, you know, obviously when I was in 8th grade, I wasn't like, ooh, Keith. Like maybe some people were, but I was not.
Total zaddy.
But anyway, yeah. So I mean it's just, and obviously it's like a huge fandom and it still continues to be for this to this day. Drama Queens podcast is huge. Everybody loves One Tree Hill. So without further ado, let's jump into the pilot episode, which we won't probably talk too much on because it's the pilot. I feel like pilots of every show, like so different than the actual show and how it takes and all that stuff. So the air date was September 23rd, 2003. Of course, gotta get 23s. And they did talk about on Drama Queens that obviously like they did that on purpose because of, you know, the 23 of it all. The Michael Jordan years obsession at that time. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that they didn't have the Gavin DeGraw song yet.
Right. Yes.
So like in the pilot, it's literally just, it's kind of like in the later seasons when I think it was like 7 and 8, when they didn't have the intro and the song, it was just One Tree Hill in black and white. That's what it was for the pilot episode. And then it was just Chad like dribbling across the bridge. And then they played that song which I do also have like notes on the music, because music to me is One Tree Hill, and was like what I loved about One Tree Hill. I can't find the song. Um, oh, it's called, I had it written down. Oh, 40-Foot Echo. It was like a really intense, like down song, which was like not how the show took off. And they had said too that like Mark, I guess, wanted it to be more of like a serious, broody, like sports show. And like obviously that's not where it went.
Right.
But and everyone's just like such a baby. It's weird to see Peyton and Nathan together. But like the bones of the show, I feel like you can see like the big basketball scene at the end with, you know, Lucas and Nathan, and but then there were also some really slow parts that I thought were interesting for like a pilot. Like there was like a 10-minute scene with Karen and Lucas just like talking, where she's like, maybe you should play ball. Like it was just like, you know what I mean? For a pilot, I feel like you really have to like distinguish what the storyline is about. And like, yeah, it's about, you know, the parents and the relationships, but I just thought it was like there were some kind of slow parts of it, you know.
My biggest realization, because I was saying to Jackie, I haven't rewatched the pilot in so long because it's just not that interesting to me. I always skip into like episode 2 or 3. I forgot that Brooke is not even in the pilot.
Yeah.
No.
She's not in the pilot at all.
Yeah.
Well, and she talked about in the rewatch podcast that she came in like, I think it was like a week and a half after everybody, and it was very chaotic. Like Haley, like Joy was not cast as Haley. Like they filmed like an initial pilot, and then they refilmed the pilot like to send in the network or whatever.
Right.
And initial pilot, like Joy was not Haley.
Yeah.
And I don't think Moira was Karen either. And then they like switched them in. So like it was a bunch of chaos. And again, like Sophia didn't even come in until like a week and a half after everybody else, and she was not in them.
And I like that they about that on the Drama Queens podcast, like when they went over the pilot, how like we now know, like, you know, Bethany and Sophia were, Peyton was already there, but like Bethany and Sophia were literally like, Bethany's like, I literally went down there and started filming right away. She goes, you know, even though I had all this experience, she goes, I felt like, you know, so small because like I was thrown in last minute, you know, so I can't imagine like being like, oh, I'm in the show and you all have been here already, like quote unquote,
Yeah,
like for a week. Like, hey, I'm like,
yeah, I think, I mean, the Nathan and Peyton of it all is like the craziest part to me. I feel like it's just like they have no chemistry.
yeah.
It's cringy, like, and it's so weird, like, because the first episode that I ever saw of One Tree Hill was Nathan and Haley's wedding at the end of season 3. And so then when I got the DVD sets and went back and was like watching every single episode, and I watched the pilot, I was like, what is this? Like, it's so crazy, like how completely different it is. And it's also something about the pilot that, like, I guess this is kind of the interest grab, because one of the things when I started watching it was I was like, wait, whose mom is who? Because Lucas is blonde, but Danny's hair, but Nathan has brown hair, but Deb has blonde hair.
But Deb's not in the pilot, is she?
No, but she was in that episode that I watched.
Yeah.
Or it was the finale of 3, first episode of 4. And in the first episode of 4, Lucas gives that whole like basically describing the show. And I was like, wait, brother, uncle, what? Like, and then Deb's brother was in it, Cooper. So then like they were talking about Uncle Cooper. So I was like, wait, who's the uncle? Who's the dad? Who's the brother? Like, who's mom's? And so I think that craziness of the storyline of like in the pilot, they live in this small town, yet not until Lucas is like trying to be on the basketball team had anybody about that Dan who again lived in this small town and probably saw Lucas and Karen at least once a week, didn't bother with them or do anything to them or talk to them.
Well, and then the whole thing is they play up into this more throughout the show, but like how Lucas had been pining over Peyton his whole life, but
Yeah.
he didn't think about the fact that Peyton was dating his half brother. Like that part was never spoken about, but he loved Peyton forever.
Yeah. And also, like, what brought on this love of Peyton? Why? Was it because she was the cheerleader, but like the broody one? Like,
No,
do you know?
maybe it's her broodiness. He's like, I'm broody, you're broody. Let's brood together.
Yeah.
I just think.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
The biggest thing for me, I wrote this down, this is the only note I took because the pilot's so stupid, is that Haley, they make Haley, like throughout the show, like she's tutor girl, they make her seem like this big nerd. But in the first episode, she's like making fun of Lucas for being a nerd. And she's like, oh, like reading is your thing. Like, and then when he's talking about the ravens and the different words for like flocks of birds, and she's like, yeah, who would know that? And then they turn her into this big nerdy girl.
Yeah.
But also too, I feel like when I first like thinking about like watching the pilot with Haley and Lucas and their interactions, I thought to myself, they are making Haley to be like the nerdy one, but I felt like the way they like had her dressed in the show and stuff didn't give me like nerd vibes. Like she wore the low cut jeans with the little midriff top, like the cute clips, a denim jacket. Like to me, she looked like, I feel like if they were like, I just feel like she didn't scream extremely nerdy. And I don't know if they did that to get more appeal for her character to make her look. But I just feel like I didn't really get, apart from being smart, like she was still insanely pretty and they still dressed her like, you know what I mean?
Well, so I think that was a lot to do with Mark because she said like in her audition and everything, she had like pigtails and like all this like quirky stuff. And he always wanted the girls' hair to be down. He always wanted them to like dress a certain. So I think that was probably Mark. Right. I'm sure that she tried to have it be more like nerdy and not as like stylish, cute, whatever. So I think that was probably his dumbass.
Second.
But yeah, I just think my biggest takeaway from the pilot, other than Nathan and Peyton being awkward, was just, I know it's a show, like it's not real, we have to create the drama, but like it just seems so far-fetched to me that living in this small town, that a dad, somebody who fathered a child could abandon them yet still live in this small town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they never moved away. They never lived away. Like they always lived in Tree Hill.
And they went to school together up in like he was in school with Nathan since obviously they were like in elementary school. Like why now when he gets to high school, now it's like a big
talking about it is like a big deal. Like
right. He plays like, they didn't talk about it too much, but like Lucas, like, played football and they didn't talk about it, but like he threw the football with Keith. Dan had that picture of Lucas in a football outfit. And I was like, okay, so Lucas was a football player, probably up until high school and like basketball just at home. But it's like, why, like, as he's already doing these sports, like you clearly know he's there. Like, I agree. Like, I understand it's for the dramatic effect, but it just felt like, bro, like you definitely would have met before these like 15 years.
Yeah.
Or like, not even a run in here
before. Like, you know what I mean? Like it just, I don't know. That was something that was like hard for me to like pinpoint. And again, I feel like every show, the pilot is always like floppy and like, you have the show starts to pick up steam not in the pilot. Except for us. I think that's the only pilot I've ever seen that like that episode could stand alone and like it was so good. Literally. And I've watched a lot of shows. But yeah, and I mean the music was really good. Like the Are You Gonna Be My Girl when they ready for the game and the hype up. They had the dashboard confessional song when they were driving the bus, which that scene also so stupid. Nathan was literally driving the school bus.
I
Or just he wasn't involved. Like,
yeah.
And it even showed that like maybe one of the other guys like switched spots with him before they got off the bus. But like even so,
Yeah.
come on now. There was also a girl who
but
then and was like, "Oh, where's Peyton?" And then she started making out with him. She's in another episode playing something else, and obviously like her part's too small for me to look her up, but I will let you know whenever I see her again. But yeah, do you want to do I do want to be and I don't want to be?
Yes.
Okay, Bun, you go first.
Is this specific to the pilot?
It could be pilot, it could be show, it could be actors, whatever you want.
Okay. I don't want to be Nathan's nipple ring. I forgot about that.
how to say that, bro? Oh my god. Ew.
I completely
So-
forgot about that part.
And
Oh God, it's the worst, and it lasts like all season 1.
And I do want to be the theme song because even though it's not in the pilot, that's my favorite part. And a big reason why I hate the later seasons is because they cut it out.
Well, and so they cut it out first, and then remember, I think it's like season 8. They have somebody covering it, which like no hate on.
Yes.
Like, let's just put it back in. Why did we
every episode is someone else singing it?
Well, I think initially they needed more time, but like you really needed 40 seconds. Like, okay, Jillian.
I don't want to be Tim.
Now, but Tim later is like
no, Tim does have a good character development for sure, but like if we're talking about season 1 pilot Tim, I literally like no, I Tim. I do want. I would say like I do want to be Haley because there's that scene where she's sitting in the cafe with her and Karen and Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
And Karen gave him the Julius Caesar book. And just like the quirky things. Well, like just like the quirky things that like Haley says and does and how like over hyper she is and stuff, like I feel like that would be me in a situation like that. So I feel like that scene just like correlates with me. So I would say like, yeah, I would say Haley.
That for sure. I would say I don't want to be Peyton and Nathan kissing. I do want to be probably like I would say the music. I just loved the music of the episode. That was one of the things that like obviously throughout One Tree Hill, music is a huge part of it, and it was really prominent, I feel like, in this episode. And like again, going back to like the Jets song, like that was like not especially what like teenagers are listening to, like, you know what I mean, just like the good songs and artists that the show continued to do. I think Joe DeVolo, I think he was the guy who really did all the music stuff and he knew what he was doing. So yeah. Oh, last note that I wanted to talk about, like, also, sorry, that was my watch. Also, how many more times did we have to see Lucas dribbling over the bridge? They showed it like 3 separate times.
Every time he went to Keeps, it was like,
is that the bridge get to like the freaking river court? Like, I was like, okay, we get it. Like, it's a cool shot, but like, you know. But yeah, I mean, again, the pilot's the pilot. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. But the next episode will be episode 2, the places you have come to fear the most.
Thank you guys for listening. New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Catch you next time.
Redhead Rewatch.